Have you ever felt like a tightrope walker trying to keep everything under control while the world throws more and more balls at you? Well, relax, because today I bring you 10 simple psychological tricks so that without the need for magic or superpowers you dominate any situation, yes, even that awkward meeting or the conversation that you have been dreading for days. Stoic philosophy teaches us that we cannot control what happens around us, but we can control how we respond, and you know what to. Answer with intelligence, calmness, and strategy is not only possible, it is necessary. You are interested, perfect, because here you will not find magic recipes or empty promises, only practical tools to become the master of situations. So make yourself comfortable, because we are going to reveal the secrets that will make them think that you have a trick up your sleeve ready well. Don't miss the last trick that will leave you speechless. But before you begin, listen to this story that will help. You better understand the wisdom contained in this material. Once upon a time, in a vast meadow, a young shepherd named Paul spent his days taking care of his flock, enjoying the calm of nature and the gentle murmur of the wind in the grass. But one day, a fierce storm shook the region. The skies darkened, the thunder rumbled, and the frightened flock began to grow. To disperse in different directions, Paul felt the fear of taking hold of him. It was the first time he had faced such a chaotic situation, however. He could not allow himself to give in to panic. He took a deep breath and remembered his grandfather's words. True strength is not in your arms, but in your heart and in your mind. Armed with that wisdom, Paul began to call his sheep one by one in spite of the roar of the wind and the rain that drenched him to the bone. His voice remained firm. He used his cane, not to impose fear, but to guide gently and safely the lost leaves, every time he found one. He whispered words of calm and led them to a shelter under a sturdy tree. The storm did not subside, and Pablo also had to face his own exhaustion. His mind tempted him with thoughts of abandonment. Is impossible. You are alone. You will not make it. But in those moments he reminded himself that every little effort counted. One more sheep, just one more, he thought, after hours of struggle. Paul managed to gather his entire flock, exhausted but relieved. He led them to an old barn that he had discovered on one of his walks in the meadow. There the sheep found refuge, and Paul a moment of peace when the storm finally ceased. The inhabitants of the nearby town, who had searched for Paul and feared for him, were surprised to see him return with his flock intact. They asked him how he had managed to stay calm and gather the sheep in the middle of the storm. The storm was not only outside. Paul replied, it was also inside me. I learned that true strength is not the absence of fear, but the decision to move forward in spite of him. If we can keep calm in our hearts, even the strongest storms can be faced. The moral of this story is that strength is not always measured by what we can do physically, but by our ability to remain calm and hopeful in the darkest moments. Because in the end, it is inner strength that allows us to overcome any adversity before we start with the first lesson. If you find in these videos, I encourage you to subscribe and activate notifications to stay informed about the latest news. We start 1. The power of silence. How many times have you spoken for the sake of talking? Or even worse, how many times have you said more than you should have and then regretted it? Silence is one of the most powerful tools you have at your disposal, and you don't need a megaphone or an army of words to make it work. Sometimes knowing how to shut up at the right time can be more effective than any long and elaborate speech. If you are one of those who think that the one who talks the most is always right, get ready for a small awakening. I'm going to teach you how to use silence like a real has-up-your-sleeve. Silence is not just the absence of noise, it's a strategy, it's a tactic, a way to gain ground without lifting a finger. If you've ever been in a tense conversation, you've probably noticed that what makes the other person most uncomfortable is not what you say, but what you don't say. You've tried to stay silent when the other person expects an immediate response. It's as if you were suddenly playing a game of chess while everyone else is playing checkers. Silence applied correctly allows you to take control of the situation without anyone noticing it. You'd be surprised how many times, instead of continuing to speak in a difficult conversation, you could let the other speak for you instead of interrupting or defending your position tooth and nail. Just stay silent. People tend to fill in the gaps. If you pause when they challenge you, they themselves will rush us with more words, and here's the kicker. Those extra words are rarely well thought out, so instead of talking, observe, listen, and when the other person realizes they're saying more than necessary, you've already won. Silence isn't something you do instinctively. You need to know when to use it. Imagine you're in a meeting or in an argument and someone is provoking you. Instead of falling in the trap of giving an emotional response, breathe and keep silent. Let time play in your favor. Silence not only gives you time to think, but it puts the other person in an uncomfortable position. That discomfort is power. That's when you begin to see how the control of the situation changes in your favor. You also knew that the Stoics, those wise philosophers, practiced the art of silence. Seneca and Epictetus taught us that in moments of conflict, words are not always the best tool. On the contrary, knowing when to be silent gives us the power to remain calm and mental clarity in chaotic situations. They understood that true strength is not in immediate reaction, but in the ability to maintain serenity, and you are ready to put it into practice. Silence is not just an evasion technique. It is one way to control the dialogue without losing your composure. You don't always have to fill the silences with words. Sometimes the wisest thing is to stay quiet. Let the other person talk more than necessary, and in the end win without saying a single word. As a wise Stoic proverb says, in silence reside the answers that words cannot reach. So the next time you find yourself in a conversation difficult, remember that talking less doesn't make you weaker, it makes you wiser too. The art of first impression. Imagine that you enter a room full of strangers. The air is loaded with quick glances and judgments. Information. What do? Well, in those first 10 seconds you can make or break a first impression. That easy, and don't get me wrong. I'm not talking about dazzling with your intelligence or with a greeting movie star style. I'm talking about something much more basic: trust, empathy, and of course control over the situation. Because deep down we all know that the first impression counts more than we'd like. The key to those 10 seconds is in how you present yourself. I'm not talking about your clothes or your hairstyle, although it's always a plus not to look like you've come out of a fight with your pillow. I'm talking about something much more subtle: how you convey security. And it's not about pretending, but about projecting. What psychologists call genuine confidence is like when you get on a roller coaster. You know the ride will be turbulent, but you hold on tight and keep going without hesitation. People notice when someone doubts, and believe me, that won't help you. How to project that confidence? Then the Stoics, those wise men of antiquity, had a very clear concept. Control starts within. You can't control others, but you can control how you respond to them. So if you walk into a room and immediately feel like everyone is watching you, take a deep breath. No one is watching as closely as you think. In fact, most are so busy thinking about their own first impression that they don't have time to evaluate yours. So relax, because that pressure is more imaginary than real. Now, if you really want to dominate those first 10 seconds, it is crucial to take into account two things: your body language and your smile, because believe it or not, your body speaks more than your words. Keep your back straight, but not as if you were in a statue exhibition. A relaxed body is much more effective than a rigid one, and most importantly, smile. A genuine smile, the one that arises without thinking, has the power to melt any barrier. If instead of entering like a robot you walk through the door with a relaxed and friendly attitude, you are likely to immediately break the ice. And don't forget to listen. Active listening is the psychological trick that makes the difference when someone is really talking to you. Listen to them, don't just nod while thinking about what you're going to say next. This is a simple but powerful strategy to make others feel valued and understood. And when you feel understood, barriers disappear. Those first 10 seconds are not just an opportunity to impress, but to establish a real connection. It's not magic, it's psychology, and if you do it right, you'll notice how the doors open by themselves. So the next time you walk into a room full of strangers, remember, trust starts with you. Don't worry about what others think, because what you project will be much stronger than any external judgment. As Epictetus said, the power of a good impression is not in what you say, but in what you do without speak. 3 magic words. Did you know that words can be like a master key? Imagine for a moment that you could enter any room of a house without having to force the door, because magic words work in a similar way. They are the keys that open doors in the minds of others, as if they were psychological tricks that you can apply without making much effort, but with great results. You would like to know what they are? These words we are going to talk about. We all have in mind phrases that other people use to earn our influence on our decision or even make us feel better. I am not talking about cheesy or hackneyed phrases like those that sound like everything is going to be fine when all you want is to be left alone. I am not talking about words that, without being a magic trick or a Harry Potter spell, have the power to change the course of a conversation or a situation. Sounds familiar to you? About using thank you, please, or even sorry? Yes, it sounds obvious, but these words open more doors than you imagine. It's not just politeness, it's pure psychology. It's as if you say, I am considering what you say, I am respecting your space, but I am also asking you for something that is not so difficult to give. And that, friend, is what can change the direction of a discussion or a negotiation. The Stoic philosopher, even if he did not use exactly the same words that I have mentioned, He also knew that the way you express yourself has great weight. Instead of falling into the temptation of imposing their point of view, the Stoics chose to use words that conveyed serenity and clarity, things that today we can call keywords. They believed that the mind, it has great power, but emotions can cloud things if you don't know how to use the right tools. Hence their conversations were neither aggressive nor passive, but deeply focused. For example, when you are faced with a tense situation, instead of launching into verbal war, try to incorporate phrases such as "I understand your point of view" or "I would like to hear more about what you think." It is not about giving in, but about position yourself in a way that the other feels heard, respected, and that, dear reader, opens the doors to influence their decisions. Sometimes also a simple "you would like to help me with this" can deactivate even the most tense situations. It is a way to give the other the feeling that they are in control, but without you losing yours. There you have the trick. Offer a path, but make the other want to walk it, and who doesn't want to be on your side if you make them feel like they're being heard and respected? Magic words aren't a magic trick or something that comes from outside. They're simple strategies like the ones the Stoics applied to keep calm and relationships balanced. Therefore, the next time you find yourself in a challenging circumstance, consider employing those magic words with the goal of influencing without being noticed, rather than going in large. I promise you that more people will use those terms first if you don't. Therefore, you're going to try. Seneca once said that while words cannot alter the world, they may alter the people who live in it. Have you ever seen someone and, for no apparent reason, felt an immediate connection with them, as if they were a part of it? Of your life forever, even if they have just met you? Magic, not rather. It is the art of instant empathy. Yes, that powerful and a little mysterious ability to make people feel comfortable with you from the first moment. Now you would like to know how you can be that person who connects with others effortlessly, as if it were a natural extension of yourself. Well, join me on this little journey. Yes, I know, this doesn't sound like a great discovery, but let me explain why it's more powerful than you imagine. People mostly don't want you to give them the solution to all their problems or tell them about your own experiences. Even if we're honest, we all have an epic story to tell. No, what they're really looking for is to feel heard, understood, as if what they're saying really matters. And here it's where you come in. Imagine you're a good condominium, and instead of looking at the scenery while driving, you're completely attentive to the wheel and to every movement. Every word of the other person is like a sign on the road that tells you where to turn, what speed maintain, what obstacles to avoid. With each answer you offer, you show them that instead of being a spectator, you're involved in their story. Listen actively. It's not just hearing, it's understanding, reflecting, and responding with empathy. Now there's a Stoic trick behind all this. The Stoics teach us to practice mindfulness, which translates into listening without judging or rushing to give answers. Being aware of your thoughts and emotions while interacting with someone allows you to control the conversation without it becoming a monologue of egos. What you're going to say next, you focus on what the other person needs to share. Body language has a lot to say, and it's not just what you say, but how you say it. If you cross your arms and walk away from the other person, no matter how much you say, "I understand you," that person is going to feel like you don't care at all. Maintain an open posture, establish eye contact, and if you can, make small gestures of affirmation. Don't go overboard with smiles, because we all know that this only generates discomfort. But if you don't show interest, why talk? Ask genuine questions. People love to talk about themselves. It's not a secret, but what they really like is to feel that their answers are worth something. Instead of throwing empty questions like "How are you?" go further. Ask with the aim of getting to know the person. Does not fill a conversation space. Questions such as "What was the most fun of your day?" or "What you are most passionate about?" What you do are questions that open doors. Be vulnerable, but with meaning. If you are approachable, the other person will be too. This does not mean that you should tell them your darkest secrets, but sharing something personal at the right time can create a bond of trust immediately. We all have stories that have marked us. Sharing them can make someone feel closer to you. Connecting with others is not a magic trick or a superpower. It is something that is learned, as the Stoics teach us. The key is to be aware of ourselves and others, to understand without rushing to judge, and above all to constantly practice these small strategies. In the end, it is not about manipulating people or fitting in all places, but being genuine and accessible. If you manage to do so, genuine connections will continue to emerge on their own. As Marcus Aurelius said, the real power is not in changing what others do, but in changing how we hear them. 5. The mirror effect. Have you ever been in a conversation and without realizing it, you Have started to move your hands just like that the other person, or maybe you've caught yourself adopting a posture similar to that of someone you're talking to. It's not magic or telepathy, it's the mirror effect, a psychological trick that you could be using without knowing it. But you imagine the power you would have if you could control this reflex in your favor. That's what we're going to explore. Your body, even when you don't open your mouth, every gesture, every posture, every movement of your hands transmits something, and the human being is incredibly good at reading those messages, even if they don't always realize it. Here comes the effect of the mirror that is like the reflection in a puddle. What you do, the other person feels it in some way and tends to imitate it as if it were a mirror that reflects your movements and, best of all, acts nearly intuitively and without conscious thought. Imitating does not entail becoming a robot. It is not about mimicking someone else like a circus performer. Rather, it is about subtly reflecting in a manner that makes the other person feel at ease and understood. A link is formed, for instance, when you casually cross your arms and the other person unwittingly does the same. Furthermore, this phenomena occurs in all human interactions, not just on love dates or business encounters. You'll be creating an unseen bridge to their trust if you can adapt your body language to match theirs. How can you use this information in your day-to-day activities, then? Here are some basic techniques, such as psychological tricks that everyone should know how to use. But if you are prone to manipulation, here's an example. Matching the other person's posture is a great way to connect. If the other person is leaning slightly in the direction of you, simply follow suit. Although you don't have to be precise, if you adapt organically, it will seem as if you're sharing their enthusiasm, which improves the likelihood of a successful negotiation. The cadence of speaking is another effective tactic. A slow and calm pace, you should do it too. Don't jump into talking fast as if you were in a race, because that could create disconnection. Verbal synchronization, although it seems like a minor detail, can change the dynamics of the conversation and facilitate understanding. The power of a smile also plays a crucial role in the connection. If you meet someone who smiles genuinely, it is best that you do it too. But be careful not a forced smile that can be more disconcerting than effective. It should be something natural, almost as if you are reflecting the positive attitude of the other. This small gesture can strengthen the relationship, making both of you feel comfortable and in tune. It is important that you do not use this mirror in a way artificial. Imagine that you are in front of a mirror, but it is not about imitating like a parrot. It is about reflecting, tuning in with the other person. And although the Stoics would talk about how to control what we can control, and our attitude is something that we can manage, the idea is to be aware of your gestures and how these can influence the interaction. The mirror effect is not a magic trick or a mind game to manipulate others, even if some try. It is simply a natural reflex that, if you use it subtly and consciously, it can open many doors, generate trust, and facilitate agreements. Remember, sometimes the greatest power lies in what is not said, in the body language we share with others. If you ever feel a little lost in a conversation, observe and reflect, because as the old trick sometimes to make the other see you first, you have to show yourself in his reflection. 6. The hidden yes. Have you ever wanted your ideas to shine, but without being the one to enunciate them? Something like being the director behind the curtain, making sure that all the actors do their part, but without them realizing that you are in charge. In other words, becoming an invisible genius of other people's decisions. Sound like a psychological trick? True, and it is. But don't worry, you're not alone in this. There are a couple of tricks that great thinkers, even the most stoic, knew how to use to guide conversations and decisions without anyone realizing they were being directed. The key is to make others believe that the ideas you yourself have suggested are completely theirs and not its cheap manipulation. It's a cunning, almost philosophical tactic that, if used respectfully, can transform any situation in your favor. The Stoics talked about how to control our emotions and thoughts, so as not to fall into the temptation of controlling everything based on brute force. But sometimes you have to know when to give a subtle push, and this is where the art of the hidden yes comes in. The first thing you have to understand is that people, even if they don't admit it, enjoy making decisions for themselves. They don't like to feel guided, but they also don't know how to take the reins without help. This is where you, with your subtle power, can come into play. If you have something you want to achieve, whether it's in a work meeting, a conversation with a friend, or even with your children, what you need is to create an environment where the other person thinks that the idea you propose is theirs, and for that the trick is to guide the conversation without it being noticed. To begin with, You must ask open questions and listen more than you speak. If you ask someone to tell you what they think without interrupting, you will be sowing the seed of your ideas in their mind. By doing so, their answers will not only serve to adjust your proposal, but you will also give them control of the situation. Ask questions that lead them to reflect on what you already have in mind. For example, instead of saying what you think if we do this, ask how you think we could improve this, so you will have planted the seeds without them realizing it. Another important technique is to make your idea feel natural. The key is in how you present things. If you can link your idea with something that makes it feel better, the ground is already valued and ready by someone else. For instance, if you want everyone at a conference to embrace a concept that appeals to you, you may do so by associating it with shared values or interests. Sometimes it is sufficient to indirectly reinforce the idea that you have already launched, i.e., if someone touches on a point that you had previously mentioned or that is similar to your idea. The trick here is that what you propose sounds familiar to them, rather than something that is imposed, and gives them a sense of control while you remain the true engine of positive reinforcement. Give them credit. Their ideas will be subtly reinforced, strengthening the initial concept and making them feel like they made the choice. Understanding individuals and their wants is the foundation of successful persuasion, which involves steering a discussion to make others believe that a concept is theirs. It has nothing to do with popularity or being dishonest. It is only an ethical and respectful method of putting influence concepts into practice. Stoic philosophy encourages us to be masters of our thoughts and to realize that sometimes imposition is not as effective as patience and delicate control over the situation. Ideas that feel like your own are ultimately the finest. But, as they say, if you can convince them that their choices are the correct ones, you will have won without much work, breaking the ice, even if you really already saw them coming. You found yourself caught up in an awkward discussion, like you've been caught up in a web of words you can't escape. Get out those situations in which everything you say seems to get worse, like a car on a slope that has no brakes, and the worst thing is that generally the discomfort is not the fault of what you say but of how you say it, or of not saying anything at all, which also has its art. But don't worry, because even if you are not an expert in social chatter, there are quite simple psychological tricks to survive to these situations without looking like a scarecrow of nerves. First of all, breathe, and I don't mean those quick and shallow breaths that leave you more anxious than you already were. Do it seriously. Take a deep breath for a count of 4 when inhaling and exhaling in the same way. This not only serves to calm your body, but also sends a signal to your brain that even though you're in an uncomfortable conversation, you're not in danger. The Stoics knew a lot about controlling emotions. The only thing we can control is our reaction to what happens to us. Don't forget this principle when faced with uncomfortable situations. Take a moment, pause, and evaluate. Once you've controlled your breathing, the next step is to use that calm to direct the conversation. If you find yourself trapped in an argument where words start to spin like a whirlwind, take control with a technique called redirection. Instead of continuing to feed the tension, subtly shift the focus to something more neutral. For example, if someone is asking you a question that's too personal or awkward, instead of falling into the trap of defensiveness, you can say something like that. That's an interesting question, but tell me what you think about. In this way, not only have you avoided an uncomfortable answer, but you have managed to get the other person to relax and start thinking about something else. Now, I know what you are thinking: serious humor, but make no mistake, humor is one of the most powerful weapons you have in your arsenal. Of course, I am not talking about making jokes in bad taste or turning the conversation into an improvised stand-up. Try to use a light dose of humor to ease the tension when things get tense. An authentic smile and an uncomplicated comment can work wonders. It's like the atmosphere lightens up and suddenly everyone is a little more comfortable. Let's say you're in a work meeting and someone asks you about a mistake you made. Instead of getting defensive, you can say something like, "It's going on. It seems like my brain went on vacation that week. Thankfully, I'm back from my break and I fixed it." This not only lightens the moment, but shows that you're capable of taking charge of the situation without letting it affect you emotionally. Remember, what's important here is not the mistake, but how you handle discomfort at the end of the day. Awkward conversations are just temporary moments. They're not a judgment about who You are, or about your intelligence, just one more part of the day-to-day. The Stoics teach us to stand firm in the face of difficulties, not to let ourselves be carried away by emotions, and to find serenity in the midst of chaos. So the next time you find yourself caught in an uncomfortable chatter, breathe, redirect, and if you need it, do not hesitate to add a touch of humor, because at the end of the day, as Carl Jung said, discomfort is not the enemy, but the opportunity to prove your ability to stay calm when the world gets weird. 8. The trick of the 3 options. Have you ever found yourself facing an important decision, such as choosing what to have for dinner, what to watch on TV, or even what direction to take in your life, and suddenly you feel that the options are drowning you? If you are one of those who tend to get caught in that tangle of thoughts, always looking for the hidden meaning in every choice, then get ready, because today I bring you a trick that the Stoics probably would have approved of, although maybe they didn't use it as much because they were too wise to go around with that nonsense. Let's talk about the 3-choice trick. Imagine that you are in a store ready to buy a phone. It often happens to you that you find yourself faced with so many options that instead of deciding quickly, you start thinking about what will best serve your life well. The same thing happens when you have to make important decisions, like choosing between several work proposals or deciding which path to take in a project. The trick is to present options in such a way that the decision is not only easier but almost inevitable. And here comes the trick of the 3 options. This trick works like magic, because it allows you to have the total control of the situation without the other person realizing that it has been subtly manipulated. The key is structure. Offer 3 options, not 2. No more, just 3, and not just any type of options, but options that fit perfectly with what you really want. Let's say you are trying to get someone to accept your job proposal, or even that they decide to spend the afternoon with you. Instead of asking directly you want going out or staying at home, what you do is offer 3 alternatives. You would like to go for a walk in the park, watch a movie at my house, or eat out. Here the interesting thing is that the option you want the most is not the one that is in the center or the one that stands out the most, but the one that would stand out the least on its own. And best of all, the other person is apparently in control of the situation because they think they chose between the 3 options. This little psychological trick is rooted in something deeper. The Stoic philosophy. The Stoics understood that the decisions we make not only depend on the circumstances, but also on how we approach them. It is like when a sailor cannot control the wind, but can adjust the sails so that the ship continues to move in the right direction. The magic is in the way you present the alternative, not only in what you present. Here is the most interesting part. The 3 options should not be the same. If you give 3 options that seem too similar, you miss out on the effect. For example, if you are offered a dinner at home, in an expensive restaurant, or in a fast food place, you can be sure that the choice of expensive restaurant will be the one that your interlocutor will choose, even if what you really want to do is to make a choice. In order to make the decision compelling, you manipulate expectations by giving the impression that the possibilities are at the proper level. What you want is a less expensive option. Hence, the next time you have to make a tough decision in your personal or professional life, don't restrict yourself to just 1 or 2 possibilities. Instead, give the individual 3 options that point them in the direction of what you do. You want to, but without feeling pressured. After all, if an ancient philosopher had known how to manipulate human psychology with such skill, surely he would have been able to control more than just his own thoughts. Let it be very clear to you what I am going to tell you, my friend. The decisions are not made by fate, they are made by you. But if you know how to present the options, fate will seem to have decided it. 9. Controlling the chaos. Have you ever felt that the world is falling apart? Around you, everything is going wrong. Things don't go as you expected, and suddenly it seems that the whole universe is conspiring to make you lose your mind. And of course the worst, it's not only what happens, but the pressure of having to stay calm, because let's be honest, if you're in a critical situation and you don't know what to do, everyone notices it, and there you're trying to convey security to others as if your life were an epic movie and you're the hero who has everything under control. But how do you do it? How do you stay calm when chaos is about to devour you? This is where the magic of Stoic philosophy comes in. No, I'm not suggesting that you become a monk who meditates all day long. I'm not telling you that you don't want to worry about anything anymore, because that would be a joke. What I want to tell you is that calm in the midst of chaos is not something magical, but a skill that you can train. And best of all, you don't need to be a genius or have superpowers. What you need is to practice a few simple psychological tricks to stay in control. First, breathe. No, seriously, Don't underestimate the power of breathing. If you find yourself in a stressful situation, the first thing you should do is inhale deeply. Sometimes all you need to get back to calm, it's a couple of long breaths. Think in your mind like it's a fluttering glass of water. When you take a deep breath, it's like the water starts to calm down, and slowly the clarity comes back. Now it's not just about breathing. Look at what you can control. You've realized that when everything seems to be going wrong, we tend to think about everything that is out of our reach. This is like trying to fix a water leak while you are still looking for the screw you lost 3 years ago. The Stoics talked about focusing only on what we can control if you can't change the situation. The key is in quiet confidence. It's not about being the loudest person in the room or shouting that everything will be okay. People perceive calm when they see you make clear decisions and stand your ground. If you don't know what to do, nothing will happen. Just say something like, "I'm going to take control of this," and put it into practice, even if you're about to scream. The important thing is to act resolutely, even if you're looking for a simple trick. If you picture yourself in the future and imagine that you've already overcome the crisis, you'll realize that this moment of uncertainty is not as serious as it seems. Little trick gives you perspective and calm, because in the end everything passes, and believe me that chaos that seems eternal to you in a short time will be just a memory. Staying calm in moments of crisis is not a matter of being perfect, but of being aware that chaos is an inevitable part of life. With deep breaths, focusing on what you can control, and transmitting confidence to others with your behavior, you will become in that person who, although he is struggling inside, projects a solid calm, like a rock. In the end, the only thing you need is to be a little more stoic, and remember that even in chaos, calm is in your hands. As Brian Tracy says, in the midst of chaos, only those who dominate their mind can find peace. 10. The formula for the perfect closure. Have you ever finished a conversation and you have been thinking this has been a disaster? Those moments in which, after saying goodbye, you are left with the feeling that you could have done something better, something more memorable, has happened to all of us. And is that just like in a movie? The end of a conversation or interaction is crucial for people to remember you, but how to achieve a perfect closure? Here are some keys to leave a mark that you don't forget. First, let me tell you that you don't need to be a communication expert to get this right. In fact, what it takes is more common sense than you imagine when you find yourself in an interaction. Whether it's a work meeting, a casual chat, or even an interview, the way you end is key. Think of it as the last sip of a drink you've enjoyed. If you do it right, you leave to the other person wanting more with a positive feeling. If you do it wrong, the whole rest of the interaction can fall apart like a house of cards. Then how to close successfully? Here goes the formula. The first part is quite simple. Actively listen when someone talks to you. You're not just waiting for your turn to speak, but you're really absorbing what they're saying. People like to feel heard, and this is the first step to make sure you come off well. It's not just a matter of listening. It's a matter of making the other person feel understood and Ada. Now, the perfect closure is not just listening. It is necessary to give something to the other person at the end of the conversation. It can be a kind word, a genuine compliment, or even advice that relates to what you talked about. It is what really creates a lasting impression. The Stoics talked about the importance of small acts of kindness and wisdom, and this principle still applies today. It is not about making big gestures, but about being genuine, about making the other feel better after talking to you. Finally, the cherry on the cake leaves the door open for a future encounter. This does not mean that you have to meet with a person immediately, but you do something like, "I'd love to keep talking about this another time," or "If you ever need to talk about this, you know where to find me." A closure like this leaves a sense that the interaction was valuable and that it could continue in the future. Now that you know how to close a conversation effectively, ask yourself this: why it's so important is simple in a world saturated with interactions and ongoing stimulus. Like the Stoics, who emphasized virtue and reason as a legacy, your aim is to make a good impression on everyone you meet. After all, what you leave in the minds of others is what really endures. Regardless of the situation, a good closing is a chance to establish a strong reputation and be remembered positively. To put it briefly, don't undervalue the importance of closing in any discussion. It's what separates the person who has listened to you from the one who is just another face in the throng. Therefore, be careful to leave an impression of intelligence, friendliness, and an open welcome the next time you meet someone. Do it because, in the end, we all want to remember the individuals who left us something, not just for yourself. As Gandhi, the only thing that really counts is what you leave in other people's thoughts. If you've read this far, Leave a few words in the comments section that reflect your level of knowledge. To let YouTube know that you are helpful to others like you, I encourage you to subscribe, turn on alerts, and leave comments. This encourages us to keep producing material of this kind in the future. You should watch the final 2 videos you sent me, in my opinion. We suggest I really value your time and assistance. See you on our next journey.